Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy History Channel. Tonight, we step into the early age of aviation, when the sky was no longer only a dream above human reach. This is the story of people who looked at birds, wind, engines, and fragile wings, then believed the impossible might be tested by hand. At first, flight was uncertain. Every takeoff carried risk. Every landing taught a lesson. Yet each attempt brought the world closer to a new kind of freedom. Early aviation was not born in comfort. It grew through patience, danger, failure, and astonishing courage. The first machines looked delicate, but they changed how people understood distance forever. A field could become a runway. A workshop could become the beginning of an industry. A short flight could alter history. Tonight, we will follow that transformation with calm curiosity. If you enjoy these gentle journeys, I invite you to like, subscribe, or share a thought below. It helps others find their way here too, one sleepy soul at a time. But for now, all you need to do is settle in. Let your shoulders soften. Allow your breathing to slow. And as the day begins to fade away, join me as we explore the first great age of flight together. Let's begin. Human flight began with balloons long before engines entered the sky. Before propellers turned and wings carried people forward, flight rose upward in silence. The first great breakthrough did not come from a runway, but from heated air trapped inside fabric. In the late 18th century, balloonists showed crowds that humans could truly leave the ground. It was not steering in the modern sense. It was surrendering to the wind while trusting fire, gas, and fragile material above your head. That made it even more astonishing. For the first time, people on the ground watched living passengers climb into the open sky and remain there. No myth, no dream, no painted angel. A real human body had crossed the ancient boundary between earth and air. Balloon flight changed imagination before it changed transportation. It proved that the sky was not sealed shut. Once that idea became real, everything after it felt slightly less impossible. Airplanes would come later, but the first doorway into the sky was round, drifting, and beautifully uncertain. The Wright brothers changed history with 12 seconds above Kitty Hawk. The flight was almost unbelievably brief, yet it divided history in two. On a cold December morning, a machine of spruce, fabric, wire, and nerve lifted from the sand. It traveled only a short distance, but it did something no powered craft had done under full control. It rose, moved forward, carried a pilot, and landed without being pulled by gravity alone. The achievement did not look grand in the way people might imagine. There was no cheering crowd and no polished airport. There were only a few witnesses, a windswept beach, and a strange machine built by two brothers from Ohio. What made the moment extraordinary was not distance. It was control. Flight had stopped being a lucky leap and became a repeatable act of engineering. That tiny span of time opened the path to airliners, satellites, global travel, and a planet connected by routes through the sky. 12 seconds became the seed of the modern world. The first airplanes had no cockpits to protect their pilots. Early aviators sat almost completely exposed to the world they were entering. Wind struck their faces. Rain hit like thrown gravel. Cold air stiffened hands and made simple controls harder to manage. There was no sealed cabin, no windshield in many designs, and no comfort beyond what clothing could provide. Flying meant placing the body directly inside the weather. That exposure shaped the whole experience. Pilots smelled fuel, oil, damp grass, and hot engine parts. They heard every change in the motor because the sound surrounded them without insulation. Their eyes watered at speed, and goggles became essential equipment rather than style. The danger was obvious, but the openness also gave them a powerful connection to the aircraft. They could feel the wind shift before instruments confirmed it. They could sense speed through pressure on the body. Modern passengers travel inside protected rooms in the sky. The first pilots rode outside, trusting their nerves to read the air itself. Early pilots flew machines so fragile they could twist in flight. The first aircraft were not sleek metal vehicles. They were often handmade structures of wood, linen, wire, and faith. Many could flex so visibly that pilots felt the machine moving around them like a living frame. Wings had to be light enough to lift, yet strong enough to survive gusts. That balance was brutally difficult. A sudden strain could loosen a brace, tear fabric, or warp the shape that made flight possible. Pilots did not simply operate these machines. They listened to them. They felt vibrations through their hands and feet. They watched for trembling wings and learned the personality of every engine cough. In those early years, aviation demanded mechanical sympathy as much as carriage. A pilot had to understand when the craft was asking for gentler handling. Every successful flight helped engineers learn where wood could bend, where wire could pull, and where a dream needed stronger bones. Fragility was not a flaw of the era. It was the price of learning. Aviation grew from bicycle workshops into a world-changing industry. The early story of flight did not begin inside huge factories. It began in small places where practical minds understood balance, chains, bearings, and lightweight frames. Bicycle building taught valuable lessons. A good bicycle had to be strong without being heavy. It had to respond instantly to tiny movements. It depended on efficient mechanical parts that ordinary people could repair. Those same principles became crucial when inventors tried to build flying machines. The connection may sound surprising, but it makes perfect sense. Before aircraft engineers existed as a profession, many pioneers were skilled mechanics who worked with the best machines of their day. The bicycle also changed the culture of movement. It gave people speed, independence, and a new feeling of personal travel. Aviation took that feeling upward and made it global. From shop floors crowded with wheels and tools came ideas that would lead to aircraft companies, airports, and international routes. The sky was reached by people who already understood motion. Some early aviators navigated by rivers because maps were unreliable. For the first pilots who traveled beyond familiar fields, the landscape itself became the guide. A river was easier to follow than a road because it curved through the countryside in a continuous line. From above, it shone, widened, narrowed, and pointed the way even when paper maps failed to match reality. This was navigation by recognition rather than instruments. Pilots looked for bridges, church towers, railway lines, coastlines, and watercourses. Rivers were especially useful because they often led towards cities, ports, and valleys. Yet they could also deceive. Mist could hide them. Flooding could alter their appearance. A wrong bend might carry an aviator far from the planned route. This made cross-country flying a mental challenge as much as a mechanical one. The pilot had to compare a moving world below with memory and rough charts. Long before screens showed location, the Earth had to be read like a giant, open book. The first air races made ordinary crowds believe flight was real. Public competition did something private experiments never could. It brought flying machines before thousands of people and made them perform in daylight. Spectators could see aircraft take off, circle, turn, and return. That mattered deeply because many early claims of flight seemed unbelievable to the public. A race changed disbelief into shared witness. The machines were still strange and noisy, but they were no longer rumors from distant fields. They were moving through the air in front of families, reporters, officials, and rival inventors. Speed added drama. Every lap proved that aircraft could be controlled repeatedly, not just lifted once by luck. The events also encouraged rapid improvement. Designers wanted lighter frames, better engines, and more reliable control. Pilots became public figures, admired for nerve and skill. Air racing turned aviation into spectacle, but it also made it practical in the public imagination. People began to understand that flight was not a stunt. It was becoming a new human ability. Early flying schools turned daring amateurs into the first professional pilots. At first, many people learned to fly through trial, advice, and frightening mistakes. That could not last. As aircraft multiplied, experience had to be organized into instruction. Flying schools gave early aviation a structure it desperately needed. Students learned how to handle controls, judge wind, manage takeoff, and approach landing with enough speed to remain safe. They also learned discipline. Bravery alone was not enough. A good pilot needed patience, timing, and respect for the machine. Training fields became places where aviation knowledge passed from one person to another before textbooks could fully catch up. Instructors often had only a little more experience than their pupils, which made every lesson part of a larger experiment. Still, these schools changed the profession forever. They created standards. They produced pilots for exhibitions, mail service, military units, and early passenger work. The idea of the aviator shifted from daring adventurer to trained specialist. Flight began to require credentials as well as courage. World War I transformed aircraft from curiosities into powerful machines. Before the conflict, many people still saw airplanes as fragile novelties. They were exciting, but their purpose remained uncertain. War forced that question to change with terrible speed. Armies needed information, and aircraft could look beyond hills, trenches, and enemy lines. At first, crews observed and reported. Then they carried cameras. Soon, aircraft were adapted for fighting, defense, and attack. The pressure of combat accelerated design in a way peacetime competition could not. Engines became stronger. Airframes became tougher. Pilots demanded better visibility, better climb, and better handling. Factories learned to produce aircraft in large numbers, while governments invested heavily in training and engineering. The change was dramatic. In only a few years, the airplane moved from experimental machine to military tool. That transformation shaped the future of aviation after the war as well. The skills, factories, pilots, and technologies did not vanish. They flowed into civilian aviation and helped build the air age that followed. The first passenger flights felt more like experiments than travel. Buying a ticket in the earliest days did not mean stepping into a familiar transport system. It meant accepting discomfort, uncertainty, and awe in equal measure. Passengers often sat close to the pilot or in open spaces where the engine noise filled every thought. Flights were short, schedules were fragile, and weather could cancel everything. The experience was thrilling because it was not yet ordinary. A traveler could rise above roads and towns that had always been seen from ground level. Even a brief journey felt like entering the future before it was ready. Companies had to persuade people that aircraft could be useful, not merely impressive. Safety, comfort, and trust became part of the business. Every successful passenger flight helped turn fear into curiosity. The public slowly learned that flying could serve everyday life. Those early travelers were not only customers. They were witnesses to a new kind of movement, one that would eventually shrink the world. Hot air balloons carried people skyward before the airplane existed. The principle behind hot air ballooning is beautifully simple. Warm air is lighter than cooler air, so a large envelope filled with heat can rise. Yet making that principle carry people required courage and craftsmanship. Early balloon makers worked with paper, fabric, ropes, baskets, and open flame. The result seemed magical to 18th century observers, but it was rooted in physics. When the balloon lifted, it showed that humans did not need wings on their bodies to enter the sky. They needed to understand the air well enough to use it. These flights also introduced the first questions of aerial travel. How high could people go? How could they descend safely? What happened when winds shifted? Each ascent gathered knowledge as well as wonder. Ballooning gave science a dramatic stage and gave society a new symbol of possibility. Long before engines pulled aircraft forward, heated air proved that the atmosphere could become a road. The Montgolfier brothers first flew animals to test balloon safety. Before people trusted themselves to a new invention, they sent living passengers as proof. The famous early demonstration used a sheep, a duck, and a rooster. To modern ears, that sounds almost like a fable, yet it was a serious experiment. Each animal represented a different question. A sheep was thought to show how a land mammal might respond. A duck already lived partly in the air and water, so it gave a comparison. A rooster was a bird that did not usually fly very high, which made it useful for judging altitude effects. The flight rose before a royal audience and returned with the animals alive. That success mattered enormously. It suggested that ascent did not instantly harm a living creature. The choice of passengers also reveals the careful uncertainty of the age. People were not simply reckless. They were stepping into unknown conditions and testing them in the ways available. Human flight followed because the animals came back. Benjamin Franklin watched early balloons and imagined future aerial highways. When the American statesman saw ballooning in France, he did not dismiss it as a passing amusement. He understood that a new invention often looks useless before society learns what to do with it. At the time, balloons could not be steered with precision, and many observers wondered what practical value they had. Franklin looked further ahead. He recognized that rising into the air might eventually change communication, travel, and even the balance of power between nations. His curiosity was important because it showed how serious thinkers responded to early flight. They did not need every problem solved before they saw the importance of the breakthrough. A baby technology can seem awkward and still contain the future. Franklin's reaction reminds us that aviation was not born fully formed. It began as a question hanging over the crowd. What could humans do now that the sky had opened? That question would take more than a century to answer. Ballooning became a public sensation across Europe in the 1780s. After the first successful ascents, balloon fever spread with astonishing speed. Crowds gathered wherever a launch was announced. Prints, songs, clothing, and household objects carried balloon designs. People who had never studied science suddenly argued about gases, air pressure, and height. The spectacle was easy to understand because everyone knew what the sky had meant before. It had been unreachable. Now someone could float into it before breakfast and return with a story. That made ballooning both entertainment and revolution. It also changed how people saw inventors. A machine could now create a public event on the scale of theatre or royal ceremony. Every ascent brought tension because no one could be entirely sure where the balloon would land. Farmers, nobles, children, and scholars might all become witnesses. The craze showed that aviation was cultural before it was commercial. People did not only want transportation. They wanted to feel the old limits of the world loosen above their heads. Early balloon pilots had almost no control over their direction. Rising was only part of the problem. Once airborne, a balloon drifted wherever the wind decided to carry it. Pilots could climb or descend by managing heat or gas, and sometimes different layers of air moved in different directions. That gave a little influence, but not true steering. This made every journey uncertain from the beginning. A planned landing could become a chase across fields. Ground crews followed by horse or carriage, trying to guess where the craft might settle. The pilot had to watch the surface carefully and choose a safe moment to come down. Trees, rivers, rooftops, and crowds could all become hazards. This lack of control was one reason balloons inspired both wonder and doubt. They could lift humans into the sky, but they could not yet master the sky. That distinction mattered. It pushed inventors toward airships, propellers, wings, and engines. Freedom upward was thrilling, but freedom in direction became the next great dream. Hydrogen balloons could fly higher, but carried dangerous hidden risks. Hydrogen gave balloonists a powerful advantage because it was far lighter than air. A hydrogen-filled envelope could rise without needing a constant fire beneath it. That made longer flights possible and reduced one obvious danger from open flames. Yet the gas carried another threat. It burned easily, and an invisible leak could turn a graceful aircraft into a disaster waiting for a spark. Early aeronauts did not always understand every chemical danger in detail, but experience taught caution. Gas production itself could be difficult, messy, and expensive. Filling a large balloon was a major operation that required planning and equipment. Still, the promise was irresistible. Hydrogen offered greater performance and helped push ballooning beyond short demonstrations. It also showed aviation's recurring bargain with risk. A better technology could solve one problem while creating another. The history of flight is full of that pattern. Every gain in height, speed, or range demanded new knowledge to survive it. Parachutes were tested from balloons before powered flight arrived. The idea of slowing a fall is older than the airplane, but balloons made it testable in the real sky. Inventors could rise high enough to attempt a descent beneath a canopy, while spectators watched from below in breathless suspense. Early parachutes were not compact emergency packs. They were often large frames or folded fabric devices attached before the leap. The person using one had to trust air resistance with their life. These experiments mattered because they separated two parts of flying. One was getting into the sky. The other was surviving the return. Parachute tests also changed how people thought about disaster. Falling no longer had to mean helplessness. A device could turn a deadly drop into a controlled descent. Not every test worked safely, and the fear was real. Yet the principle proved strong enough to endure. Later aviators, military crews, and skydivers all inherited knowledge first explored beneath drifting balloons. Some early aeronauts performed sky shows for paying crowds. Flight became entertainment almost as soon as it became possible. Balloonists understood that an ascent could draw enormous attention, and attention could support a career. They advertised launches, sold tickets, and performed before crowds who wanted to see a human being rise above the ordinary world. The show could include music, speeches, decorations, or dramatic timing. Yet the central attraction was always the same. Someone would trust a fragile craft and leave the ground. These performers were not merely entertainers. They were risk-takers, technicians, and public educators. Their shows helped spread aviation knowledge to people who might never read a scientific report. A child in a field could watch a balloon lift and understand instantly that the future had changed. Public performance also created pressure to attempt more daring feats, which could be dangerous. Still, these spectacles kept flight in the public imagination. They made the sky feel closer because ordinary people could gather and see it entered. Military balloons helped armies watch battlefields from above. Long before aircraft carried cameras and radios, balloons gave commanders something extraordinary. They offered height. From the ground, a battlefield could be confusing and hidden by smoke, hills, buildings, and distance. From above, observers could see movement that soldiers below might miss. This made tethered balloons valuable for reconnaissance. They could be held by cables and raised near the front, giving trained watchers a broader view. The information could guide artillery, reveal troop positions, or warn of movement. The balloon itself was vulnerable, of course. It could attract enemy fire, and weather could make observation impossible. Still, the military value was clear. Once armies realized that the air could provide information, warfare changed direction. The sky became a place from which to see, not only a place to dream about. This was one of aviation's earliest practical roles. Before speed mattered, before air combat existed, the first advantage of flight was perspective. Civil War balloon observers sent reports down by telegraph wire. During the American Civil War, balloon reconnaissance reached an unusual and remarkable form. Observers rose above the landscape in tethered balloons and used telegraph connections to communicate with commanders below. That meant information could travel from the air to headquarters almost immediately. For an age before airplanes, this was astonishingly advanced. A person lifted above the battlefield could watch enemy activity and transmit observations while still suspended overhead. The system required teamwork. Balloon crews managed gas, ropes, launch sites, and recovery. Telegraph operators handled messages. Military leaders had to trust reports coming from a viewpoint they could not share. The method was not perfect. Weather, logistics, and skepticism limited its use. Even so, it revealed a future principle of air power. The value of flight was not only movement, it was the ability to gather information faster than people on the ground. In that sense, those balloons were early ancestors of aerial surveillance, connected by wire instead of wireless signals. Gliders taught inventors that wings needed careful control. The dream of flight could not be solved by lift alone. A craft might leave the ground, but the real question was whether a person could guide it and survive. Gliding experiments revealed that wings were not passive shelves placed in the air. They were sensitive surfaces that reacted to angle, speed, gusts, and the movement of the pilot's body. A slight shift could raise one side or drop the nose. Too much correction could turn a smooth descent into a dangerous plunge. These lessons were priceless because engines would only make the problem faster. If a machine could not be controlled while drifting downhill, it would be far more dangerous with power attached. Gliders allowed inventors to study balance in a direct way. They learned through sand, grass, wind, bruises, and broken wood. Each short glide became a laboratory in motion. Before the airplane could become a vehicle, the wing had to become something a human could command. Otto Lilienthal made thousands of flights before the Wright brothers. He did not simply theorize about flying. He climbed hills, strapped himself into handmade gliders, and launched his body into the air again and again. His repeated experiments made him one of the first people to gather real experience as a pilot. That mattered because many earlier flying ideas lived mostly on paper. Lilienthal turned the subject into practice. He studied curved wings, measured lift, and published work that later inventors treated with deep seriousness. Photographs of him hanging beneath his glider traveled around the world and gave flight a human shape. People could see that a man had truly glided through the air, not as a circus illusion, but as an experiment in physics. His flights were often brief, yet their influence was enormous. He showed that progress required repetition, not one lucky attempt. Every launch brought data. Every landing brought new questions. He made the sky feel reachable before engines made it sustainable. Lilienthal inspired future aviators by proving controlled gliding was possible. The importance of his work was not only that he left the ground. Others had managed leaps and brief descents before him. What made his example so powerful was the repeated evidence that a person could balance a wing in the moving air. He shifted his body beneath the frame to control the craft, much like a hang glider pilot would later do. The method was limited, but it was real control. It gave later experimenters something priceless. It gave them confidence that the air could be learned through practice. His published tables and wing studies were not distant speculation. They came from a person who had risked his own life to gather them. Young inventors read his work and saw a path. The problem of flying was no longer a fantasy waiting for magic. It was a technical challenge that could be tested, corrected, and improved. His example became a bridge between dreamers and engineers. Early glider pilots often launched themselves from hillsides on foot. Before airports, tow planes, and smooth training grounds, the hillside was one of aviation's first launch systems. A pilot would face the wind, grip the frame, and run downhill until the wing began to carry weight. The moment of lift was delicate. Too slow, and the craft would stumble. Too steep, and the nose could drop with frightening speed. The pilot's legs were part of the takeoff gear, and courage was part of the equipment. These launches taught lessons no diagram could provide. Wind did not behave the same way over every slope. Grass, rocks, and uneven ground could turn a trial into a wreck. A good hill offered airflow, space, and a forgiving place to land. That made geography part of invention. The search for suitable slopes shaped where experiments happened. From those simple descents, pilots learned how wings behaved before power complicated everything. The hill became a classroom, and gravity became the first engine. Wing warping gave the Wright flyer its crucial steering breakthrough. One of the great problems was how to keep an aircraft level and make it turn. The Wright brothers realized that a flying machine needed control around more than one axis. It was not enough to steer left and right like a boat. The wings also had to manage rolling motion. Their solution was to twist the wingtips in opposite directions, changing lift on each side. This idea came partly from watching birds adjust their wings in flight. It also came from their own experiments with kites and gliders. The method allowed the aircraft to bank, which made turning more stable. It was a simple-looking idea with enormous consequences. Instead of treating the wing as fixed, they treated it as something adjustable. That changed the machine from a powered glider into a controllable aircraft. Later systems would replace this approach, but at the beginning, twisting the wings gave human hands a way to shape the air. The Wright brothers studied birds to understand balance in flight. They watched living wings with the attention of engineers. Birds did not move through the air like stiff boards. They adjusted constantly, making tiny changes that helped them respond to gusts and turns. This observation mattered because many inventors had focused mainly on power. The brothers became convinced that balance was the central problem. A bird could recover from disturbance because it had control over its wing shape and body position. A machine needed an equivalent system. The brothers observed how birds banked during turns and how their wingtips seemed to work differently from one side to the other. These natural clues did not give them a finished design, but they gave them direction. The lesson was profound. Flight was not just lifting upward. It was continuous correction. Their genius was not copying a bird literally. It was understanding what problem the bird had already solved. Nature showed the principle, and engineering translated it into cables, wood, and fabric. Their wind tunnel corrected data trusted by earlier aviation pioneers. The Wright brothers did something that changed their work from guesswork into measurement. They built a small tunnel that could push air over miniature wind shapes and reveal how those shapes behaved. This was not glamorous. It did not look like a great public adventure. Yet it was one of the most important steps in early aviation. Many published figures about lift and drag had misled inventors because they were incomplete or inaccurate. The brothers discovered that some accepted numbers did not match reality. Instead of accepting failure, they tested dozens of wind sections themselves. They built balances sensitive enough to compare tiny forces. The results gave them better wind shapes and clearer expectations. It also showed a key feature of their method. They were willing to doubt authority when experiment disagreed. The sky was not conquered by bravery alone. It was approached through careful correction, small apparatus, and the patient refusal to trust a number just because it was famous. Kitty Hawk offered steady winds and soft sand for experiments. The place was chosen with care, not romance. The brothers needed wind strong enough to help a glider lift at lower ground speed. They also needed open space, few obstacles, and a surface that might soften a crash. Coastal North Carolina offered those advantages. The dunes and beach gave them room to test, repair, and try again without the clutter of a city. The remoteness was difficult. Supplies had to be brought in, weather could be harsh, and isolation made the work physically demanding. Yet the same isolation gave privacy. They could experiment without crowds interfering or rivals watching every adjustment. The landscape became part of the invention. Wind shaped the testing schedule. Sand entered the machinery. Storms battered the camp. Each season taught them more about the air and their own limits. The famous achievement did not happen in a polished laboratory. It grew from a demanding partnership between human patience and a windswept shore. The Wright Flyer used a hand-built engine and wooden propellers. Their machine needed power, but suitable engines were not waiting on a shelf. Available automobile engines were often too heavy, so the brothers and their mechanic built one themselves. It was not elegant by modern standards, but it met the crucial need. It gave enough power while staying light enough to fly. The propellers required equal ingenuity. Many people imagine them as air screws, like ship propellers working in water. The brothers saw that they were rotating wings. This insight changed how they designed them. Each blade had to create lift forward, not upward, while turning at speed. They carved wooden propellers with impressive efficiency for the era. The result was a complete system. Engine, propellers, wing, and controls had to work together, or nothing would happen. The achievement was not one invention. It was a collection of solved problems. Every part had to be light, strong, and coordinated. The sky accepted no weak link. Orville Wright piloted the first sustained powered flight. He lay in the aircraft rather than sitting upright, because reducing drag mattered. The machine moved along a launching rail, lifted into the cold air, and wavered forward while witnesses watched. The pilot had little time to enjoy the moment. He had to manage an unfamiliar craft that responded sharply and imperfectly. The flight lasted only seconds, but it was sustained, powered, and controlled enough to mark a turning point. It was not a leap from a ramp, and not a glide pulled briefly upward by luck. The engine drove the propellers, and the machine carried itself through the air. What makes the moment striking is how modest it looked beside its consequences. A short distance over sand became the beginning of powered aviation. The pilot was not a passenger in a miracle. He was working every instant, learning even during the attempt. History sometimes arrives with thunder. This time, It arrived as a fragile machine, fighting the wind. Wilbur Wright soon proved airplanes could circle and return. A straight hop was not enough to convince the world that aircraft had become useful. True control meant turning, staying aloft, and coming back toward a chosen place. Wilbur's later demonstrations were vital because they showed that powered flight could be extended and directed. Circling required coordination. The aircraft had to bank, yaw, maintain speed, and avoid losing lift. Each successful turn proved that the machine was not merely surviving the air. It was beginning to travel through it with intention. This changed the meaning of the invention. A craft that could only rush forward briefly was a marvel. A craft that could circle was a vehicle. It suggested routes, training, and repeatable operation. Observers who saw these flights understood that something larger had happened than a single experiment. The airplane was gaining manners. It could obey, however roughly. That obedience made the future visible. Once an aircraft could return, it could one day go almost anywhere. Many newspapers first ignored the Wright brothers' astonishing achievement. It seems strange now, but the first reports did not instantly transform them into global heroes. Some editors were cautious because stories of flying machines had often been exaggerated. Others did not grasp the technical difference between powered control and earlier attempts. The lack of a huge public audience also made the event easier to doubt. In an age before instant video, proof traveled slowly. A small group of witnesses and a few photographs were not enough for every newspaper to recognize a world-changing event. This delay reveals something important about invention. Breakthroughs do not always announce themselves clearly. Sometimes the world needs time to understand what has happened. The brothers also guarded details of their machine, which added to public uncertainty. While they sought recognition and protection, skepticism lingered. The result was a surprising gap between achievement and fame. Powered flight had begun, yet many readers went about their mornings without realizing that human history had just shifted above the sand. European crowds later watched Wilbur fly with stunned amazement. When he demonstrated the aircraft in France, skepticism gave way to astonishment. Experienced aviators, journalists, and spectators saw the machine turn with a level of control many had not believed possible. This public proof mattered because Europe had a vibrant aviation community, and its experts had heard claims before. Seeing was different. The aircraft did not merely hop. It circled, climbed, and responded with authority. The crowd understood that they were watching a mature solution rather than a lucky experiment. The effect was electric. People who had doubted the brothers began to praise them. Rival designers suddenly had to reconsider their own machines. The demonstrations helped shift aviation's center of attention and accelerated international progress. They also gave Wilbur a powerful role in the history of flight. He was not only a CO inventor, he became the person who showed the world what controlled powered flight looked like. The performance turned private achievement into undeniable public fact. The Wright brothers' patent battles slowed early American aviation growth. After solving the central control problem, they tried to protect their invention through patents. From their viewpoint, this was reasonable. Years of work, risk, and expense had produced something valuable. Yet the legal struggle that followed created tension across the young aviation world. Other designers feared lawsuits, and some companies hesitated to develop aircraft freely. In the United States, this helped create a slower and more conflicted environment than might otherwise have emerged. The issue was not simply greed or stubbornness. It was the difficult question of how a revolutionary idea should be owned. Control systems were fundamental to safe flight, so the patent reached into the heart of aircraft design. As aviation grew more urgent, especially with military interest rising, pressure increased to share technology more effectively. The episode shows that invention is not only mechanical, it is legal, commercial, and national. A breakthrough can open a future, but ownership can shape how quickly that future arrives. Santos Dumont became a hero by flying publicly in Paris. He understood the power of visibility. In a city that loved spectacle and engineering, he performed flights where crowds could gather and judge for themselves. His work with airships had already made him famous, but his airplane demonstrations gave him an even stronger place in aviation history. People admired his elegance, confidence, and willingness to fly in public rather than hidden testing grounds. This mattered deeply in Europe, where official observation and public witness helped establish credibility. His aircraft may not have matched later technical achievements, but the cultural impact was immense. He made flight feel fashionable, immediate, and urban. Instead of a distant experiment in an isolated place, aviation became something that could happen near boulevards, parks, and cheering spectators. Santos Dumont also embodied a different style of pioneer. He was not only a mechanic or theorist, he was a public figure who made the possibility of flight feel alive in the imagination of a modern city. His aircraft made European spectators believe powered flight had arrived. The machine known as the 14 BIS had an unusual appearance, with its box-like structure and forward elevator. To spectators, however, the important thing was not beauty. It moved under its own power and rose in public view. That public setting gave the flight special importance. People did not have to rely on letters, rumors, or distant claims. They could watch the attempt unfold before them. The aircraft's performance was limited compared with what would soon follow, but its symbolism was enormous. It showed that Europe was not merely hearing about aviation from abroad. It was participating directly in the new age. The flight also earned official recognition under the rules of the time, which made it especially celebrated. For many observers, this was the moment powered flight became visible, social, and undeniable. The 14 BIS was awkward, brave, and historically loud in its message. The sky was no longer reserved for balloons. Heavier than air machines were arriving. Henry Farman completed one of Europe's first official circular flights. Aviation needed proof that aircraft could do more than lift briefly and come down. A full circuit showed control in a far more convincing way. Farman's achievement demonstrated that a pilot could take off, turn through the air, and return over a measured course. That made the flight a milestone in Europe's rapidly developing aviation scene. The challenge was not just staying airborne. The aircraft had to maintain enough speed through turns, resist instability, and remain responsive until the end. Spectators and officials valued the circular route because it suggested practical future use. A machine that could return to a starting point could be trained with, displayed, and improved in systematic ways. Farman helped turn flight from a dramatic escape from the ground into a repeatable performance. His success also encouraged contests, prizes, and better designs. Each official record gave aviation more credibility. The circle he flew was more than a path in the air. It was evidence of control. Louis Blériot crossed the English Channel in a tiny monoplane. The crossing was short by modern standards, but in its own time it felt almost impossible. The channel was not simply water. It was a psychological barrier between nations and a dangerous gap for a fragile aircraft. Blériot flew a small machine with a single pair of wings, an exposed pilot position, and an engine that could not inspire complete confidence. He had little room for error. If the motor failed over the water, rescue was uncertain. Navigation was also a challenge because haze and distance could blur the coastline. Yet he pressed on and reached England, proving that the airplane could cross a natural frontier that had shaped history for centuries. The feat captured public imagination because it connected flight with geography and national security. An aircraft had passed over the sea without needing a ship. The world suddenly seemed smaller, and islands no longer felt quite as protected by water. Blériot's Channel flight made Britain suddenly fear aerial invasion. For centuries, the sea had helped protect Britain from armies on the continent. Ships could be watched, challenged, and blocked. An aircraft suggested a new kind of vulnerability. Blériot did not arrive with weapons or soldiers, yet his flight carried a powerful message. If one person could cross the channel in a delicate machine, then future aircraft might cross in numbers. Newspapers, officials, and military thinkers began to imagine threats that had not existed before. The event helped turn aviation from a sport of daring individuals into a matter of national defense. It also showed how quickly a peaceful achievement could change strategic thinking. The same machine that thrilled spectators could unsettle governments. This pattern would repeat throughout aviation history. New abilities in the sky often produced wonder first and anxiety soon after. Blériot's landing was a triumph of personal courage, but it also warned Britain that the old moat around the island had acquired an overhead door. Early monoplanes looked elegant but sometimes failed without warning. A single wing could make an aircraft appear clean, modern, and fast. Many designers believed this arrangement offered less drag than stacked wings. Yet elegance did not guarantee safety. Early materials, limited testing, and uncertain structural calculations made some monoplanes vulnerable to sudden failure. Wings had to resist bending, twisting, and loads that changed rapidly in gusty air. If internal bracing was weak or misunderstood, a beautiful machine could break apart in flight. This frightened pilots and officials, and in some places it led to restrictions or suspicion. The issue was not that the monoplane idea was wrong. The problem was that engineering knowledge had not fully caught up with ambition. Designers were reaching toward the future while still learning how airloads behaved. The contrast is striking. Some early monoplanes looked like the shape aviation would eventually take, yet they arrived before the science was mature enough to make them consistently safe. Biplanes dominated early aviation because their wings were stronger. Two stacked wings gave designers a practical advantage in an age of wood, wire, and fabric. The arrangement could be braced into a rigid box-like structure, which helped resist bending and twisting. That made biplanes attractive when engines were weak and materials had to stay light. The extra wing area also helped aircraft lift at lower speeds, which mattered when runways were rough and control was still developing. Biplanes were not perfect. They created more drag than later designs, and their struts and wires looked cluttered. Still, they offered a reliable path forward when reliability was urgently needed. Pilots could accept slower speed if the machine felt strong enough to trust. Many training aircraft, military machines, and early record setters used the layout because it worked with the tools of the time. The biplane became the classic image of early flight for a reason. It was a compromise between dream and material reality. Wood and fabric carried pilots into the first aviation age. The earliest aircraft were built from materials that seem humble today. Spruce, ash, linen, cotton, wire, and glue formed machines that dared to enter the sky. These materials were chosen because they were light, workable, and familiar to craftsmen. A skilled builder could shape a spar, repair a rib, or stretch fabric over a frame with hand tools. The result looked delicate because it was delicate, yet it could be surprisingly capable when properly designed. The fabric did not merely cover the aircraft. It helped create the smooth surfaces that air could flow over. The wooden frame carried loads like the skeleton of a bird-inspired machine. Maintenance was constant because weather, vibration, and rough landings all took their toll. This gave early aviation a hands-on character. Pilots and mechanics often knew every joint and cable. The first air age was not born from aluminum factories. It was stitched, carved, tightened, and tested by hand. Early aircraft fabric was tightened with chemical dope. A loose fabric covering would flutter, sag, and ruin the shape of a wing. To prevent that, builders applied special coatings that shrank and stiffened the material as they dried. This process created a tighter surface and helped seal the fabric against moisture. The word sounded casual, but the work was serious. A well-doped wing could hold its shape more cleanly in the airflow, which improved performance and safety. The chemicals also brought hazards. Fumes could be unpleasant and dangerous, and many mixtures were highly flammable. Workshops needed care, ventilation, and discipline. The process reveals how much early aviation depended on small details that passengers never saw. A wing's success did not come only from its outline. It depended on the tension of fabric, the condition of stitching, and the quality of the coating. A smooth surface could be the difference between a machine that flew well and one that fought the air. Propellers were shaped with the care of fine musical instruments. A propeller looked simple from a distance, but it was a highly refined wing in rotation. Each blade had to meet the air at changing angles from hub to tip, because different parts traveled at different speeds. This made carving a good propeller a demanding craft. Builders used wood selected for strength and grain, then shaped it with patience and precision. The surface had to be smooth. The balance had to be exact. Even a small flaw could create vibration that damaged the engine or weakened the airframe. Some early propellers were beautiful objects, polished until they looked almost ceremonial. Yet their purpose was deeply practical. They turned engine power into forward motion, and poor efficiency could waste precious horsepower. In the early years when engines were weak, every gain mattered. A well-made propeller could lift a machine from failure into flight. It was not decoration. It was one of aviation's most elegant pieces of hidden mathematics. Many early aircraft engines were borrowed from cars and motorcycles. Powered flight needed light engines, and the engine industry had not yet been built around aircraft. Inventors often adapted what they could find. Automobile and motorcycle engines offered a starting point, but they brought problems. A road engine could be too heavy for the power it produced. It might rely on cooling or lubrication systems that worked well on the ground, but struggled in the air. Vibration could shake delicate structures. Reliability was vital because an aircraft could not simply pull over beside the road. These borrowed engines show how aviation grew by raiding existing technologies and then reshaping them. Mechanics removed weight, altered parts, and searched for better power to weight ratios. The demand for flight pushed engine design in new directions. Soon, aircraft required specialized motors built for lightness, endurance, and altitude. The early dependence on ground vehicles is a reminder that aviation did not appear from nowhere. It climbed upward using inventions already rolling below. Rotary engines spun around fixed crankshafts like whirling metal storms. In many early aircraft, the engine itself rotated with the propeller while the crankshaft stayed fixed. This unusual design helped with cooling because the cylinders moved rapidly through the air. It also offered a useful power-to-weight ratio at a time when every pound mattered. But the motion created strange effects. The spinning mass produced strong gyroscopic forces that could influence how the aircraft turned. Pilots had to learn the personality of these engines, especially when maneuvering sharply. They also sprayed oil, often castor oil, which could cover the aircraft and the pilot. Starting, managing, and maintaining them required skill. To modernize, The idea of an entire engine whirling at the front of an aircraft seems almost wild. Yet for a period, rotary engines were a practical answer to aviation's urgent needs. They were noisy, messy, powerful for their weight, and unmistakably alive in motion. Early flight often depended on machines that behaved with dramatic character. Early pilots sometimes breathed castor oil from engine exhaust. Rotary engines commonly used castor oil as a lubricant because it performed well under demanding conditions. The problem was that much of it did not stay neatly inside the machinery. It could spray into the slipstream and drift back toward the pilot. In open cockpit aircraft, that meant aviators might inhale fumes or swallow traces during flight. The effect was unpleasant because castor oil is also a powerful laxative. This strange detail captures the physical reality of early aviation better than any polished photograph. Pilots were not simply heroic figures posing beside machines. They were cold, battered by wind, deafened by engines, and sometimes coated in oil. Their bodies absorbed the discomforts of technology that was still young. Yet they kept flying because the experience was worth the hardship. Every new field has its indignities, and early flight had plenty. Behind the romance of goggles and scarves was a practical world of grease, fumes, vibration, and endurance. Some aircraft needed mechanics to swing propellers by hand. Before electric starters became common, starting an aircraft engine could require a person to stand directly in front of the machine and pull the propeller through by force. This was called hand propping, and it demanded caution. The mechanic had to coordinate with the pilot, check throttle settings, and move away instantly when the engine caught. A careless moment could be fatal because the propeller became an invisible disk of power at speed. The procedure reveals how intimate early aviation was. Machines did not wake up with the turn of a key. They had to be coaxed into life by touch, timing, and trust between people. The pilot inside the aircraft depended on the person outside it. The mechanic depended on the pilot to handle controls correctly. This teamwork happened before every flight in many settings. The skyward journey began on the ground with a dangerous gesture, one human arm pulling a wooden blade into motion. Landing gear was often little more than wheels and hope. Early aircraft touched down on rough grass, sand, dirt, and uneven fields. Their undercarriages had to be light, so there was little room for comfort or complexity. Wheels were small. Shock absorption was limited. A bad landing could bounce the aircraft, snap a strut, or pitch the nose forward. Pilots had to judge speed and angle with care because the machine offered little forgiveness. In some designs, skids helped prevent a complete nose-over, while in others, the wheels and frame took the punishment directly. This made landing one of the most anxious parts of a flight. Getting airborne was dramatic, but returning safely tested judgment. The ground rushed up with no paved runway to smooth the final seconds. Every landing taught designers what the structure could endure. It also taught pilots humility. A successful flight was not complete when the engine ran well or the aircraft stayed aloft. It ended only when the fragile machine came back to Earth intact. Early runways were usually open fields rather than paved strips. The first flying grounds looked nothing like modern airports. A suitable field needed space, clear approaches, and a surface flat enough to avoid wrecking the aircraft during takeoff or landing. Grass was common because it was available and forgiving, but it changed with weather. Rain could turn it soft. Ruts could catch wheels. Livestock, fences, and hidden dips could become real hazards. Pilots often chose their direction according to the wind rather than a marked strip, which made an open field useful. Buildings were simple, if they existed at all. A shed might serve as a hangar, workshop, and shelter from rain. Fuel could be stored in cans. Spectators might stand dangerously close because the rules of airport safety had not yet developed. These fields were temporary by modern standards, yet they were the birthplaces of aviation culture. The airport began as a patch of land where people believed a machine might rise. Pilots learned wind direction from flags and chimney smoke. Before electronic weather reports and airport towers, the air had to be read from ordinary signs on the ground. A strip of cloth, a drifting plume, or dust moving across a field could tell an aviator which way the invisible current was flowing. This mattered because early aircraft needed to take off and land into the wind whenever possible. A wrong judgment could make the machine run too far across rough ground or settle too quickly near the end of a field. Pilots became close observers of the world below them. They watched grass ripple, trees lean, and smoke flatten against the sky. Even animals and washing lines could become clues. The skill was practical, but it also gave flying a strange intimacy with weather. The pilot was not separated from nature by instruments. He had to notice what the air was doing in real time. Each flight began with an act of reading the unseen. Early aviators flew without radios for many years. In the first decades of powered flight, a pilot could be completely alone once the wheels left the ground. There was no voice from a control tower, no call from another aircraft, and no simple way to ask for help. Decisions had to be made inside the cockpit, often with only a compass, a clock, and the pilot's own judgment. This isolation made every flight more demanding. If weather changed ahead, the aviator had to decide whether to turn back, land in a field, or keep going. If an engine sounded wrong, no mechanic could advise from below. Silence was part of the job. The pilot might be visible to people on the ground, yet unreachable. This changed the psychology of flying. Skill included independence, calm thinking, and a willingness to accept uncertainty without guidance. Later, radio transformed aviation by making the sky conversational. Before that, the cockpit was a small, moving island of responsibility. Hand signals once helped pilots communicate with ground crews. On noisy flying fields, speech could vanish beneath engine sound. A spinning propeller, coughing motor, and gusting wind made ordinary conversation almost useless. Crews developed gestures to solve the problem. A raised arm, a circling hand, or a firm signal to stop could carry instructions when words could not. These signals were especially important during starting, taxiing, and positioning an aircraft. The pilot often had poor visibility from the cockpit, while the people outside could see hazards more clearly. Trust mattered. A misunderstood gesture could damage a machine or injure someone standing too close. Over time, signaling became a language of movement around aircraft. It reflected the teamwork hidden behind every early flight. Aviation has always celebrated the lone pilot, but the machine usually reached the air through coordinated effort. Even before headsets and radios, people found ways to speak across noise. Their vocabulary was made of hands, eyes, timing, and shared attention. Airports began as simple fields with sheds and fuel cans. The first places devoted to flying were often rough, temporary, and surprisingly modest. A wide patch of grass might be enough if the approaches were clear and the owner allowed aircraft to use it. A shed could protect a fragile machine from rain. A few tools, spare parts, and fuel containers might serve as the entire support system. There were no polished terminals or baggage belts. There might not even be a clear boundary between spectators, mechanics, pilots, and animals wandering nearby. Yet these simple spaces were the first homes of powered aviation. They taught people that flight needed infrastructure, however basic. Machines required shelter. Engines required fuel. Pilots needed information about wind and ground conditions. As traffic increased, informal fields slowly became organized aerodromes with hangars, signals, workshops, and rules. The airport did not appear fully formed. It grew from practical necessity around machines that needed somewhere safe to rest between attempts at the sky. Early aviation maps marked barns and church towers as guides. Navigation from the air began with landmarks that could be recognized by human eyes. A pilot looking down needed shapes that stood out from fields, roads, and rivers. Tall churches, large barns, railway stations, mills, and crossroads became useful references. Maps for aviators began to emphasize what could be seen from above, not simply what mattered on the ground. This changed cartography in a subtle way. A road map helped a traveler follow a route. An aerial map helped a pilot confirm position while moving quickly through open air. Some landmarks were dependable because they had distinctive shapes. Others were confusing because many villages looked similar from height. Pilots had to compare the map with the living landscape while also managing the aircraft. A mistake could send them miles off course before they noticed. These early charts show a world being reimagined from above. Familiar buildings became signposts in a new three-dimensional geography. Fog could trap early pilots because instruments were so limited. Visibility was not just a comfort. It was survival. When fog rolled across a field or swallowed the route ahead, early pilots could lose the horizon that helped them keep the aircraft level. Without reliable blind flying instruments, the body could give false signals. A pilot might feel upright while slowly banking or descending. That made mist and cloud especially dangerous. Even if the machine was working perfectly, the human senses could be tricked. Fog also hid landmarks, landing areas, wires, hills, and other aircraft. A familiar route could become unreadable in minutes. Pilots sometimes waited for weather to clear because pushing on could mean entering a blank world with no trustworthy reference. The danger helped drive the development of better instruments and training. Aviation could not become dependable while it remained limited to clear skies. Fog taught a hard lesson. To master the air, pilots first had to learn how easily the air could erase the world. Night flying was terrifying before reliable lights and instruments. Darkness changed everything. The ground lost its detail, the horizon could disappear, and distances became difficult to judge. Early pilots who flew after sunset entered a world where familiar skills became uncertain. A field that looked easy by day might vanish into blackness. A row of trees could appear too late. A weak lamp might be mistaken for another signal or a distant town. Aircraft instruments were basic, and cockpit lighting could be poor. The pilot had to protect night vision while still reading controls. Engine sound became more important because sight offered less reassurance. Yet night flying promised enormous advantages. Mail could move faster. Journeys could continue after daylight. Military aircraft could operate under cover of darkness. The challenge was too valuable to ignore. Slowly, airfield lights, route beacons, improved instruments, and special training made night operations more practical. At first, though, flying at night meant trusting a fragile machine inside a darkness that concealed almost everything. Some early pilots followed railroad tracks across unfamiliar country. Railways offered one of the clearest lines a pilot could see from above. Tracks cut across the landscape in purposeful paths, linking towns, valleys, and stations. For aviators without modern navigation aids, they could function like long steel arrows. Following them reduced the chance of becoming lost, especially when traveling over unfamiliar territory. The method had practical advantages. Rail lines often led toward populated places where fuel, help, or open land might be found. Stations provided names that could be checked against a map. Yet the system was not foolproof. tracks branched. Several lines could meet. Smoke, haze, or weather could make them hard to distinguish. A pilot might follow the wrong route and only realize it after reaching an unexpected town. Still, the technique shows the resourcefulness of early flying. Aviation did not immediately replace older transportation networks. It leaned on them. The newest machine in the sky often used the railway age as its guide. Barnstormers brought aviation thrills to small towns across America. After the Great War, many aircraft and pilots entered civilian life with few obvious jobs. Some took to the road, or rather to the air, bringing flying displays to communities that had never seen an airplane up close. A barnstalling pilot might land in a farmer's field, arrange a show, sell rides, and move on to the next town. For local audiences, the arrival could feel extraordinary. The machine came from the sky, folded into everyday rural life, and offered a glimpse of the future for a few dollars. People gathered near fences and fields to watch takeoffs, landings, and stunts. Many experienced their first flight during these tours. Barnstorming was risky, improvised, and sometimes poorly regulated, but it spread aviation culture with remarkable speed. It made the airplane personal. Instead of reading about flight in a newspaper, ordinary families could hear the engine, touch the wing, and watch a pilot climb into the air. Wing walkers stood on aircraft while crowds watched from below. The act seems almost impossible to imagine calmly. A performer climbed out onto a moving aircraft, exposed to wind, vibration, and height, while the pilot kept the machine steady enough for the stunt to continue. Early wing walking began as a daredevil spectacle, but it required real coordination. The walker needed balance, strength, and timing. The pilot had to understand how extra movement affected the aircraft. Crowds looked upward because the danger was obvious even from the ground. There was no scream between the audience and the risk. A slip, a gust, or a misjudged maneuver could turn entertainment into tragedy. Some performers added rope ladders, transfers between aircraft, or other breathtaking variations. These displays helped sell tickets, but they also revealed how much confidence people were beginning to place in airplanes. A craft once considered too fragile to trust was now carrying performers outside the cockpit. The stunt was reckless, but it showed how quickly fear was becoming fascination. Barnstorming shows helped normalize airplanes after World War I. For many people, the airplane had first become familiar through wartime news. It was associated with reconnaissance, danger, and distant battlefields. Traveling aerial shows changed that relationship. They brought aircraft into peacetime spaces where families gathered for entertainment. A machine that had seemed military and strange could become a source of excitement at a county fair or open pasture. The performances were often dramatic, but their deeper effect was everyday familiarity. Children saw pilots as living people rather than newspaper figures. Farmers watched aircraft land in fields they knew. Townspeople paid for short rides and returned with stories of seeing their homes from above. This helped shift public imagination. Airplanes were not only weapons or experimental machines. They could be attractions, tools, and eventually vehicles for ordinary travel. Barnstorming also built a market for aviation skills. Pilots, mechanics, promoters, and small airfield owners all found roles. The shows made flight visible enough that the public began to accept it as part of modern life. Early stunt pilots invented loops that once seemed impossible. Turning an airplane upside down was once regarded as a terrifying idea, and for good reason. Early machines were fragile, and many pilots did not know how the structure would respond to extreme maneuvers. A loop demanded speed, strength, and precise control. The aircraft had to climb through a curving path, pass through inverted flight, and complete the circle without losing too much momentum. To spectators, It looked like a violation of common sense. An airplane was supposed to remain beneath the sky, not carve a circle through it. Stunt pilots discovered that with enough speed and the right technique, the maneuver could be survived and repeated. Their experiments expanded the mental boundaries of aviation. They showed that aircraft were not limited to straight travel. They could move through space in ways no ground vehicle could match. The loop became a symbol of mastery. It proved that pilots were learning not only to fly, but to command the geometry of flight. The first loop was a stunning test of aircraft strength. A full vertical circle placed demands on an airplane that ordinary flight did not. As the machine pulled upward, forces increased through the wings, wires, struts, and pilot's body. If the structure was weak, it could fail under the load. If the pilot misjudged speed, the aircraft might stall or tumble. That made the earliest successful attempts more than showmanship. They were practical demonstrations of what a machine could endure. The maneuver also challenged fear. People knew that gravity pulled downward, and watching an aircraft climb over the top of the circle seemed to defy instinct. Yet the physics was real. Speed created the path, and lift could be redirected through the curve. Once pilots proved the maneuver possible, it reshaped training and design. Aircraft had to be understood in 3 dimensions, not just as vehicles that rose and descended. The first successful loop made the sky feel larger. It revealed that flight had a vertical theater as dramatic as any horizontal journey. Air races pushed engines and pilots beyond ordinary limits. Competition compressed years of ambition into minutes of speed. In racing, a small improvement could mean victory, so designers searched for every advantage. Engines were tuned harder. Airframes were smoothed and lightened. Pilots learned to fly close to the edge of performance without crossing into disaster. The sport was thrilling because the danger was visible. Crowds could hear engines straining and watch aircraft cut around pylons at speeds that would have seemed impossible only a short time earlier. Racing also created practical progress. Faster aircraft required better cooling, stronger structures, cleaner shapes, and more reliable engines. Lessons learned for trophies later influenced military and civilian design. Pilots became part athlete, part engineer, and part test subject. They had to feel when a machine was giving its best and when it was warning of failure. Air racing showed that aviation advanced not only through careful laboratories, it also advanced through pressure, rivalry, and the human desire to go faster than anyone before. The Schneider Trophy accelerated seaplane speed and aircraft design. This international contest focused on seaplanes, but its influence reached far beyond water takeoffs. Nations and manufacturers treated the prize as a proving ground for advanced ideas. The aircraft built for it became sleek, powerful, and specialized. Designers chased speed with refined shapes, improved engines, and careful attention to drag. Because the competitors operated from water, they also had to solve problems of floats, spray, stability, and takeoff resistance. These demands made the machines difficult to perfect, but the reward was prestige and technical knowledge. The rivalry pushed aviation toward higher performance during a crucial period between the wars. Some of the people and engineering lessons connected to these races later fed into famous high-speed aircraft designs. The trophy mattered because it made speed a national project as well as a sporting achievement. A race around pylons became a workshop for the future. Water, engines, and ambition combined to sharpen the airplane into something faster and more disciplined. Seaplanes helped aviation reach places without prepared runways. In the early air age, smooth landing fields were not always available. Water offered an answer. Lakes, harbors, rivers, and sheltered bays could become landing areas for aircraft fitted with floats or boat-like hulls. This opened routes to remote communities, islands, coastal towns, and wilderness regions. A seaplane did not need a paved strip or a cleared field. It needed suitable water and enough room to take off. That made it incredibly valuable in places where geography resisted conventional aviation. Pilots could deliver mail, carry passengers, support exploration, and connect settlements that were otherwise difficult to reach. Water operations brought their own hazards. Waves could damage floats, hidden debris could strike the hull, and changing weather could turn a landing area dangerous. Still, the flexibility was extraordinary. Seaplanes showed that aviation could adapt to the planet, rather than waiting for the planet to be prepared. They made the surface of the water part of the world's first flexible airport network. Flying boats made oceans feel slightly less unreachable. Before long-range land planes became dominant, large aircraft with hulls like boats offered a bold solution for crossing wide stretches of water. They could land on harbors rather than runways, which made them attractive for international routes where airport infrastructure was limited. Their size allowed them to carry crews, passengers, fuel, and equipment over distances that seemed remarkable for the time. These machines were not just aircraft. They were symbols of a connected globe. A traveler could step aboard near the water and imagine crossing spaces that had once belonged almost entirely to ships. Flying boats helped pioneer routes over seas, linking continents and stages and giving aviation a maritime character. The journey was still slow compared with modern flight, and weather remained a serious force. Yet the psychological change was immense. Oceans no longer represented only weeks aboard a vessel. They became air routes, measured by fuel stops, radio reports, and the steady beat of engines over open water. Early male pilots faced mountains with almost no navigation aids. Carrying mail by air turned pilots into practical pioneers. The cargo was not glamorous, but the routes could be deadly. Mountains were especially dangerous because they created sudden weather, hidden passes, downdrafts, and limited emergency landing options. Pilots often flew with basic instruments and incomplete information. A valley could lure them forward until cloud closed behind. Snow could erase landmarks. Winds could push a light aircraft toward terrain faster than the pilot expected. Yet the mail had to move, and pressure for dependable service was intense. These aviators developed deep knowledge of routes through experience, memory, and sometimes painful loss. They learned which passes were treacherous and which valleys offered a chance of survival. Their work helped prove that aviation could serve public needs under difficult conditions. Every successful trip showed that airplanes could compete with trains and roads for speed. The letters in the mailbags were ordinary, but the act of carrying them through mounting weather was anything but ordinary. Air mail helped prove airplanes could serve everyday life. The airplane had to become useful before it could become trusted. Mail service gave it a clear purpose. Letters and documents did not need comfort, reassurance, or a view from the window. They needed speed. That made mail an ideal early cargo for building regular routes. Governments and companies could measure performance, schedule flights, and compare delivery times with older methods. The public saw results when messages arrived sooner than expected. This mattered because it moved aviation away from spectacle. A flight no longer had to be a race, a stunt, or a military mission. It could be part of daily communication. Airmail also created pressure for better airports, navigation systems, weather reporting, and aircraft reliability. The network grew because each improvement made the next route more possible. Pilots carried envelopes, but they were also carrying confidence. Once people trusted airplanes with messages, it became easier to imagine trusting them with business, cargo, and eventually themselves. Some mail routes were lit by bonfires and beacon towers. When airmail expanded into night operations, pilots needed a way to find the path after dark. Before modern electronic navigation became standard, routes were marked with visible signals. In some places, fires helped guide aircraft across stretches of darkness. Later, beacon towers with rotating lights created a chain that pilots could follow from one point to the next. This was an astonishing idea. The landscape itself was being fitted with a luminous trail for airplanes. A pilot could scan the night and search for the next flash, using it as reassurance that the route still lay ahead. The system turned night flying from a desperate gamble into a more organized challenge. It also demanded maintenance on the ground. Lights had to work, towers had to stand in the right places, and maps had to match what pilots saw. These beacons were not glamorous, but they were essential stepping stones toward reliable aviation. They made the darkness navigable. Dangerous airmail flights created legends of courage and endurance. The early mail service produced stories that sounded almost unreal because the risks were so constant. Pilots faced storms, mechanical trouble, poor visibility, and emergency landings in unforgiving places. They flew in open or poorly protected cockpits, often through cold and turbulence that left them exhausted. The work demanded discipline because the purpose was routine delivery, not applause. That contrast made the courage even more striking. These were not performers seeking cheers. They were working pilots carrying public responsibility through uncertain skies. Some became famous for surviving impossible conditions. Others were remembered because they did not return. The dangers forced aviation to mature. Each accident investigation, each route change, and each equipment improvement grew from the high cost of early service. The legends were not just romantic tales. They were evidence of how much was learned through hardship. Airmail pilots helped build the habits of scheduled aviation. Their endurance made the airplane less like a wonder and more like a dependable tool. Early airlines began with cramped seats and very nervous passengers. The first commercial passengers were entering a service that had not yet learned how to feel ordinary. Cabins could be small, noisy, and uncomfortable. Seating was limited, and the ride could be rough enough to test anyone's confidence. Many passengers dressed carefully for the occasion because flying still felt special, almost ceremonial. Others boarded with real anxiety. They were trusting a machine that their parents might have considered impossible. Airlines had to sell more than transportation. They had to sell belief. Staff reassured travelers, schedules were advertised, and safety became part of the public message. Even then, a flight could be delayed by weather or mechanical issues. The experience was far removed from modern routine, but it carried a powerful attraction. A journey that once took much longer by train or ship could suddenly be shortened. Those early passengers helped create the market by accepting discomfort in exchange for speed and wonder. They were customers, but also pioneers in ordinary clothing. The first stewardesses were nurses who reassured anxious travelers. Early airlines understood that passenger confidence was fragile. One solution was to hire women with nursing experience because they brought an image of calm competence and practical care. Their role was more demanding than serving refreshments. They helped passengers board, answered questions, managed air sickness, and offered reassurance during a time when flying still felt intimidating. The nursing background mattered because the cabin environment could be physically difficult. Passengers might feel faint, frightened, or unwell. Having a trained professional nearby made the aircraft seem safer and more civilized. These workers also helped shape the identity of airline service. They turned a mechanical journey into a cared-for experience. The job came with strict expectations about appearance, age, weight, and behavior, which reflected the social limits of the era. Even so, their presence was historically important. They helped persuade the public that air travel could be orderly, human, and manageable. In the early cabin, reassurance was as important as speed. Passenger cabins were noisy enough to make conversation difficult. Early air travel did not surround passengers with calm. Engines roared, air vibrated through the structure, and insulation was limited. Conversation could require raised voices, and nervous travelers had plenty of sound to feed their imagination. The noise came from machinery working hard and from the airflow around the aircraft. Unlike modern cabins, early interiors did little to soften the experience. This affected how people remembered flights. A passenger did not simply sit and arrive. The journey was felt through the whole body. The sound made speed seem physical and alive. It also made fatigue more likely, especially on longer trips. Airlines gradually learned that comfort mattered if flying was going to attract more than adventurous customers. Better cabins, improved engine mounts, and quieter designs helped change public expectations. Yet there is something revealing about those loud journeys. Early passengers could not forget that they were inside a machine. The aircraft announced itself every second, carrying them forward with a voice that filled the cabin. Early air travelers sometimes wore heavy coats during flights. Cabins were not always heated well, and many aircraft flew in conditions that made warmth a serious concern. At altitude, the air could become cold enough to make passengers deeply uncomfortable. Drafts found their way through gaps, and early interiors often provided little protection compared with modern aircraft. Travelers sometimes dressed as if preparing for winter, even if the journey began on a mild day. Coats, hats, gloves, and blankets were not decorative. They were part of staying comfortable in the sky. This detail reminds us how physical early air travel was. Passengers did not step into a sealed environment that erased the outside world. They carried the weather with them, especially as the aircraft climbed. The discomfort also shaped airline service and design. A truly practical passenger system needed warmth, ventilation, and a sense of safety. Speed alone was not enough. People had to arrive without feeling battered by the atmosphere they had just crossed. Air sickness was common because early flights were rough. The first passenger aircraft could toss, drop, and sway in ways that made the body rebel. Turbulence was harder to avoid because weather knowledge was limited, and aircraft often flew at lower altitudes. Cabins were small, ventilation could be poor, and engine fumes sometimes added to discomfort. For passengers already anxious about flying, motion sickness could make the experience memorable for the wrong reasons. Airlines knew this was a problem. A traveler who arrived pale and miserable might not be eager to buy another ticket. Crews learned to care for uneasy passengers, and aircraft designers worked towards smoother rides. Better routes, improved stability, and more powerful machines gradually helped. Yet air sickness also reveals how new the experience was for the human body. People had traveled by horse, carriage, train, and ship, but flight introduced unfamiliar motion in 3 dimensions. The stomach learned aviation slowly. Before flying became routine, the body had to be convinced as much as the mind. Weather forecasting became essential as aviation moved beyond experiments. A short test flight could wait for a clear morning. A transportation system could not. As aviation grew into mail service, military planning, and passenger travel, weather became a central concern. Pilots needed to know about wind, storms, visibility, temperature, and pressure changes before they committed to a route. Bad information could place an aircraft in conditions it was never built to handle. Forecasting, therefore, became part of aviation safety and scheduling. Meteorologists, ground observers, and communication networks gained new importance because the sky had become a workplace. Weather reports were not abstract science. They affected lives, cargo, and public confidence. Aviation also pushed forecasting to improve. because pilots needed practical detail along specific routes and at useful times. The relationship went both ways. Better weather science made flying safer, and flying made better weather science more valuable. The airplane forced people to understand the atmosphere not as a backdrop, but as an active environment that could welcome or refuse every journey. Flying at altitude revealed cold and oxygen problems. As aircraft climbed higher, pilots discovered that the upper air was not simply more sky. It was a different environment. Temperature dropped, and exposure could numb hands, slow reactions, and turn a long flight into a struggle against the body. More dangerous still, thinner air carried less oxygen. A pilot might become confused, sleepy, or slow without immediately understanding why. This made altitude a medical problem as well as an engineering challenge. Aircraft could climb faster than human physiology could adapt. Early high flying required warm clothing, oxygen equipment, and careful awareness of symptoms. The discoveries changed aviation design and training. It was no longer enough to build a machine that could reach greater heights. The person inside had to survive and think clearly there. Altitude promised smoother air, better range, and military advantage, but it demanded respect. The sky became less like empty space and more like a layered world, with each layer asking new questions of the human body. Pressurized cabins arrived because high flying exposed human limits. The higher aircraft flew, the more obvious it became that passengers could not simply endure the upper atmosphere. Thin air made breathing harder, and cold made comfort difficult. Oxygen masks helped in some situations, but they were not ideal for routine travel with many people aboard. Pressurization offered a better answer. By maintaining a safer internal atmosphere, aircraft could fly above much weather while keeping passengers alert and comfortable. This changed commercial aviation profoundly. Higher routes could be smoother and more efficient, and cabins could feel less like survival chambers. The technology required strong fuselages, reliable seals, careful valves, and new safety procedures. It was not just a luxury. It was a way to make high-altitude travel practical for ordinary people. Pressurization also marks an important shift in aviation thinking. Designers were no longer building only for the machine's performance. They were building an artificial environment around the human body. To fly higher, aircraft had to carry a small version of livable air. Early aviators carried lucky charms into dangerous skies. When machines were fragile and forecasts uncertain, pilots often reached for personal rituals. A charm, photograph, mascot, or small object could provide comfort before takeoff. It did not replace skill, but it helped steady the mind. Early aviation lived close to danger, and people facing danger often create symbols of protection. Some aviators had favorite clothing. Others trusted a particular token in a pocket or cockpit. These habits reveal the emotional side of flight. Pilots were not fearless machines. They understood the risks more clearly than anyone because they felt every vibration and knew every weakness in the craft. Luck became a language for all the things no checklist could fully control. Weather might shift. An engine might falter. A landing field might be rougher than expected. The charm could not change physics, but it could help a pilot face uncertainty. In that way, early flying was both technical and deeply human, guided by calculation and touched by superstition. Harriet Quimby became the first woman to fly across the Channel. By the time she set out, the Channel had already become one of aviation's symbolic barriers. Crossing it meant more than covering water. It meant proving judgment, endurance, and faith in a small aircraft with very little margin for error. Quimby made the journey in a borrowed monoplane, wearing a distinctive purple flying suit, that later became part of her legend. The weather was difficult, and visibility over the water could make direction uncertain. She had to trust her preparation while flying alone above a stretch of sea that had tested some of the most famous aviators of the age. Her achievement should have made enormous headlines, but it was partly overshadowed by the Titanic disaster, which dominated the news at the time. That makes the story even more striking. One of aviation's great milestones happened in the shadow of another historic event. Quimby's flight still stands as a powerful reminder that women were not spectators in early aviation. They were crossing its hardest boundaries. Bessie Coleman earned her license when American schools rejected her. Her path to the cockpit was blocked by racism and sexism in the United States. Flight schools refused to train her, but she did not let their refusal define the limits of her life. She learned French, traveled to France, and enrolled where she could receive the instruction denied to her at home. That decision required money, courage, and an extraordinary belief in her own future. When she earned her international pilot's license, she became a landmark figure in aviation history. Her achievement was not only personal, it challenged the idea of who belonged in the sky. After returning to America, she performed as a stunt pilot and used her fame to inspire Black audiences at a time when segregation shaped public life. She dreamed of opening a flight school for others who had been excluded. Her story carries a fierce kind of wonder. The sky did not welcome her easily, so she crossed an ocean to claim it. Amelia Earhart helped make women's aviation achievements impossible to ignore. She became famous not only because she flew, but because she understood how public attention could change expectations. Her record flights gave newspapers strong stories, and her calm public presence made her a symbol of modern possibility. She crossed oceans, set altitude and distance records, and spoke openly about women's independence. That combination made her influence larger than any single flight. She showed that a female aviator could be skilled, ambitious, technical, and nationally celebrated. At a time when many people still treated aviation as a masculine proving ground, Earhart stepped into that world with confidence and discipline. Her fame also carried contradictions, because publicity could simplify a complex person into an icon. Yet the effect was undeniable. Young women saw someone who had made the cockpit visible as a place they might belong. Her disappearance later deepened the legend, but her real importance began earlier. She helped turn women's aviation from novelty into achievement that the public could no longer dismiss. Raymonde de la Roche became the world's first licensed female pilot. She came from the world of performance, but her place in aviation was earned through training and examination. Receiving a pilot's license in the early 20th century was not a symbolic gesture. It meant that an official body recognized a person's ability to operate an aircraft at a time when flying was still dangerous and unstable. De la Roche's achievement mattered because licensing created public legitimacy. She was not merely a passenger, enthusiast, or celebrity attached to aviation. She was certified as a pilot. That distinction helped open a door that had been treated as closed by custom rather than physics. Her career included crashes, recoveries, and continued determination, which showed how demanding the field truly was. The early aircraft she flew required physical strength, quick judgment, and tolerance for risk. Her license marked a beginning, not an ending. From that moment, women could point to a formal precedent. The sky had admitted its first officially recognized female pilot. Early female aviators fought prejudice as fiercely as bad weather. The hazards they faced were not limited to unreliable machines or sudden storms. Many also had to confront disbelief before they ever reached an aircraft. Critics claimed women were too delicate, too emotional, or too unsuited for mechanical work. These arguments were not based on the realities of flight. They were social barriers dressed as practical concern. Female aviators answered them through performance. They set records, crossed distances, trained seriously, and survived the same risks as men. Yet even success could be treated as a curiosity rather than proof of ability. Some had to secure funding, aircraft access, and publicity, while being judged more harshly than male pilots. Their persistence changed aviation culture one flight at a time. The story is fascinating because it reveals two simultaneous battles. One took place in the air, against wind, weather, and machinery. The other took place on the ground, against narrow ideas about who could be brave, technical, and free. Catherine Stinson thrilled crowds with daring precision flights. She became known for control as much as courage. Audiences came for danger, but what made her performances remarkable was accuracy. Stinson could make an aircraft trace deliberate shapes in the sky, turning flight into a disciplined display rather than a wild gamble. She performed loops, night flights, and exhibition routines that demanded timing and nerve. At a time when aviation was still new to many spectators, her skill helped transform fear into admiration. People could look up and see not chaos, but command. She also carried mail and made long-distance flights that proved she was more than a stunt performer. Her work showed how public flying could blend entertainment, technical skill, and practical demonstration. The crowds may have remembered the thrill, but the deeper achievement was mastery. Every smooth maneuver told them the same thing. The airplane was not simply an accident waiting to happen. In trained hands, it could become an instrument of astonishing precision. Ruth Law broke records in a tiny, open cockpit airplane. Her famous distance flight was especially remarkable because the aircraft was not designed for such an ambitious journey. She flew a small machine with limited protection, limited fuel capacity, and the constant discomfort of exposure. To extend her range, extra fuel was added, which made the challenge even more demanding. She faced cold, fatigue, and the mental pressure of navigating across a vast distance in an aircraft that offered little forgiveness. The achievement helped prove that determination and preparation could push modest machines far beyond expectation. Law became a national figure because her flight seemed to embody a new age of possibility. She was not carried by luxury or advanced technology. She was carried by skill and endurance. Her record also challenged assumptions about women's capacity for long, difficult flights. The small cockpit became a stage for a large statement. Aviation history is full of giant machines, but sometimes the most powerful story comes from a tiny aircraft flown with extraordinary resolve. Pilots became celebrities because flight still felt almost impossible. In the early decades, anyone who could fly seemed to possess a rare relationship with danger and the future. The public did not yet see aviation as routine transportation. It saw a person climbing into a fragile craft and entering a space where humans had never naturally belonged. That made pilots fascinating figures. Their names appeared in newspapers. Their photographs were collected. Their clothing, habits, and personalities became part of the story. A successful flight could turn an unknown aviator into a public hero almost overnight. This fame was fueled by uncertainty. Each record attempt carried the possibility of triumph or tragedy. Audiences followed pilots because their lives seemed to hang between invention and risk. Celebrity also helped aviation grow. Famous pilots attracted investors, sold tickets, supported aircraft companies, and inspired young people to learn. They became ambassadors for the sky. The wonder was not only that machines could fly, it was that certain people dared to trust them. Newspapers turned aviation records into front-page drama. Aviation arrived at the perfect moment for mass media. Newspapers needed gripping stories, and flight provided them again and again. A planned crossing, altitude attempt, or endurance record had all the ingredients of drama. There was a named pilot, a dangerous machine, a measurable goal, and an uncertain outcome. Readers could follow the build-up, the attempt, and the aftermath. Success produced celebration. Failure produced investigation, mourning, or controversy. Headlines made technical progress feel personal. Instead of explaining aerodynamics in dry terms, newspapers introduced the public to individuals racing weather, distance, and mechanical limits. This coverage shaped how people understood the air age. It made aviation feel fast, heroic, and modern. At times, it also encouraged risky attempts because fame could follow a bold record. The relationship between pilots and the press was powerful. Newspapers helped build legends, and legends helped sell newspapers. Together, they turned the early sky into a stage watched by millions. Early aviation trophies made speed a matter of national pride. A prize could turn an engineering challenge into a public contest between countries, manufacturers, and heroic individuals. Speed records were especially powerful because they were easy to understand. Faster meant progress. Faster meant better engines, cleaner shapes, braver pilots, and stronger design. When a nation's aircraft won a famous trophy, the victory suggested technical superiority. That mattered in an age when aviation was becoming tied to military strength, industrial skill, and modern identity. Competitions encouraged investment because the reward was more than money. It was prestige. Designers worked under pressure to create machines that could outperform rivals in front of judges and crowds. Pilots accepted the danger because a successful run could bring lasting fame. These trophies also accelerated innovation by making performance visible and measurable. The stopwatch became a powerful symbol. It could declare that one aircraft, one team, or one nation had briefly moved closer to the future than everyone else. Designers learned that streamlined shapes could unlock astonishing speed. At first, many aircraft looked cluttered because they were built from struts, wires, exposed engines, and open cockpits. As speeds increased, the air itself became a more obvious enemy. Drag stole power. A blunt shape could waste the work of an engine. Designers began to understand that smoothness was not only beautiful, it was performance. Covering parts, reducing protrusions, refining fuselages, and shaping surfaces carefully could let an aircraft move faster without simply adding more power. Wind tunnel testing helped reveal where air separated or created resistance. Racing aircraft often showed the benefits first because every mile per hour mattered. The lesson then spread into military and commercial designs. Streamlining changed the appearance of aviation. Machines began to look less like flying scaffolds and more like purposeful bodies shaped by invisible flow. This was a major shift in thinking. The air was not empty space to be forced aside. It was a medium that rewarded those who respected its patterns. Metal aircraft slowly replaced wood because they promised greater strength. Wood had carried aviation through its first breakthroughs, but it had limits. It could absorb moisture, vary in quality, and require careful inspection for hidden weakness. Metal offered a different future. It promised consistency, durability, and structures that could handle greater loads as aircraft grew larger and faster. The transition was gradual because metal construction brought its own difficulties. Builders had to learn new methods of joining, shaping, and protecting materials. Aluminum alloys became especially important because they offered strength without the crushing weight of heavier metals. At first, some pilots and builders distrusted metal aircraft because they seemed unfamiliar and less easily repaired by traditional craft skills. Over time, the advantages became clear. Larger airframes, enclosed cabins, higher speeds, and more reliable service all benefited from stronger structures. The change was not simply a material substitution. It marked the movement of aviation from workshop craft toward modern industry. The airplane was becoming a machine of factories, alloys, and engineering calculation. The Junkers J-1 showed that all metal airplanes could fly. In an era when many aircraft still depended on wood and fabric, this experimental machine looked like something from a later age. It was built with metal structure and skin, proving that a heavier-appearing material could still be shaped into a successful aircraft. The achievement challenged assumptions about how flying machines had to be made. Metal promised strength, but skeptics worried about weight. The designers had to show that careful engineering could overcome that problem. The aircraft corrugated metal surface became part of its distinctive identity, giving stiffness without excessive mass. It was not a commercial airliner or a polished military success in the modern sense. Its importance lay in demonstration. It proved a principle that would grow more important with every passing decade. Aircraft could be built from metal and still leave the ground. That realization helped point the way toward durable transport aircraft, stronger military designs, and the industrial future of aviation. Sometimes one strange prototype opens an entire era. Early engineers debated whether one wing or two was safer. The question was more than style. A monoplane could be cleaner and potentially faster, but a biplane could be braced into a strong structure with the materials of the day. Engineers had to weigh speed against strength, simplicity against reliability, and theory against experience. The debate was intense because crashes often raised suspicion toward particular designs. When a wing failed, people did not always know whether the cause was poor construction, excessive load, or the whole arrangement itself. Biplanes gained trust because their struts and wires made strength visible. Monoplanes offered a glimpse of the future, but sometimes arrived before builders fully understood the stresses involved. The argument pushed aviation science forward. Designers needed better calculations, better testing, and better materials before the cleaner layout could dominate. This debate shows how progress rarely moves in a straight line. The aircraft shape we now take for granted had to earn its place through evidence, accidents, improvements, and changing technology. Wind tunnels became quiet laboratories for conquering the air. Aviation could not rely forever on dangerous trial flights. Wind tunnels offered a way to test ideas before risking a pilot and full-size machine. Inside a controlled stream of air, engineers could study wings, propellers, struts, and whole models. They could measure forces that were otherwise invisible. Lift, drag, and stability became numbers rather than guesses. This changed the culture of aircraft design. A shape could be rejected before it crashed. A promising idea could be refined before it was built at full scale. The laboratory did not remove danger from aviation, but it made danger less blind. Wind tunnels also helped reveal that small details mattered. A slight curve, gap, or angle could change performance. The silence of measurement began to balance the noise of public flying. While crowds watched records being broken, engineers worked in controlled rooms where air moved on command. Much of the sky was conquered first by models held still in artificial wind. The aileron eventually replaced wing warping on most airplanes. Twisting an entire wing had worked in the earliest successful control systems, but it was not the final answer. As aircraft became faster and stronger, designers needed a more practical way to manage roll. Ailerons solved the problem by using hinged surfaces near the wingtips. One moved up while the other moved down, changing lift on each side. This allowed the aircraft to bank without bending the whole wing structure. The advantage grew as wings became stiffer and more heavily loaded. Ailerons were easier to integrate into strong designs and could be refined for better response. Their adoption shows how early breakthroughs often lead to better descendants. The first solution proves the principle, then later engineering makes it more reliable. A pilot moving the control wheel or stick today is using an idea that became standard because it separated control from structural distortion. The wing no longer had to twist like a flexible frame. It could remain strong while small surfaces did the steering. Triplanes offered climbing power but created extra drag. Adding a third wing seemed like a logical way to gain lift and improve maneuverability. In some designs, the arrangement allowed a compact aircraft to climb quickly and turn tightly. That made triplanes attractive for certain military roles during the early air combat era. Their stacked wings gave them a distinctive appearance, almost like ladders in the sky. Yet every extra wing also brought more struts, wires, and interference between airflow layers. This increased drag, which would limit speed. The trade-off was clear. A triplane might feel agile and climb well, but it could lose efficiency compared with cleaner designs. Engineers had to decide what mattered most for a particular mission. The most famous examples became legendary, partly because of the pilots associated with them, not because the layout was universally superior. The triplane represents aviation's experimental spirit. Designers were still testing the shape of the future, and for a brief period, 3 wings seemed like a possible answer. Early aircraft compasses struggled near vibrating engines and metal parts. A compass seemed simple, but flight made it difficult. The instrument had to work inside a machine full of vibration, electrical equipment, moving metal, and changing attitudes. Engine motion could make the needle tremble. Metal components could disturb magnetic readings. A banked turn or rough air could make interpretation harder. For a pilot trying to hold a course, these errors mattered. A few degrees of mistake could grow into miles of drift over time. Early aviators had to understand that instruments were aids, not perfect truth. They compared compass readings with landmarks, wind estimates, and time. Mechanics learned to place and adjust instruments more carefully. The problem also encouraged better cockpit design and navigation practice. This detail may sound small, but it reveals a larger challenge. Aviation required people to carry delicate knowledge into a vibrating, noisy, moving environment. The sky demanded instruments, then immediately made those instruments harder to trust. Accuracy had to be engineered as carefully as lift. Pilots learned that spinning could become deadly without training. A spin could begin when an aircraft stalled unevenly, with one wing losing lift more deeply than the other. The machine could then rotate downward in a frightening spiral. To an untrained pilot, the instinctive response might make things worse. Pulling back too hard could deepen the stall. Panic could steal the few seconds needed for recovery. Early aviation had to learn this lesson painfully because the behavior was not always understood. Once instructors studied spins more carefully, recovery methods could be taught. Pilots learned to reduce the stall, stop the rotation, and regain flying speed. This transformed a mysterious killer into a known emergency procedure, although still a dangerous one. The discovery also shaped aircraft design and training standards. It showed that safety was not only about building stronger machines. It was about understanding the strange situations a wing could enter when airflow broke down. The spin became one of aviation's great warnings. The air is generous only when respected. Parachutes were once resisted because commanders feared pilots might jump. It sounds astonishing now, but some military leaders worried that giving pilots parachutes would reduce their determination to save damaged aircraft. They feared that a pilot might abandon a machine too soon rather than fight to bring it home. This belief placed aircraft value above human survival in a way that feels severe today. There were also practical concerns. Early parachutes added weight and bulk, and fitting them into cramped cockpits was not always simple. Yet as combat and training accidents mounted, the argument for personal escape became stronger. A pilot trapped in a burning or falling aircraft had few options without one. The debate reveals how young aviation was. People were still deciding what responsibilities came with flight and how much protection a pilot deserved. Eventually, the logic of survival prevailed. Saving trained aircrew became both a humane and practical priority. The parachute shifted from suspected witness to essential equipment, turning last chances into something that could be carried. World War I pilots first fought with pistols and rifles. The earliest air combat was improvised to an almost startling degree. Aircraft had not been designed as fighters, so crews used what they had. A pilot or observer might carry a pistol, rifle, or even try to damage an enemy machine by hand-thrown objects. The encounters were awkward, dangerous, and uncertain. Flying the aircraft was already difficult. Trying to aim a handheld weapon from a vibrating cockpit made the challenge far greater. At first, the main purpose of aircraft was observation, but once opposing crews met in the same sky, conflict followed. Pilots began to see enemy aircraft as threats to be driven away or destroyed. This created a new problem for designers. How could a flying machine become a weapon without destroying itself? The crude beginnings of air combat show how quickly roles can change in war. A machine built to look down at the battlefield soon had to fight for control of the air above it. Synchronized guns let aircraft fire safely through spinning propellers. Mounting a forward-firing machine gun created a deadly puzzle. The best place to aim was straight ahead, along the pilot's line of flight. But on many aircraft, the propeller occupied that same path. Firing through it would shatter the blades, unless the gun was timed to shoot between them. Synchronization gear solved this problem by linking the firing mechanism to the engine's rotation. The result changed air combat dramatically. A pilot could point the whole aircraft at a target and fire with far greater accuracy. This made the fighter aircraft a true hunting machine rather than a platform for awkward shooting. The technical idea was precise, but its effects were sweeping. Tactics changed. Pilot skill changed. Aircraft design changed. The sky became more dangerous almost overnight. This invention shows how a small mechanical timing problem can alter history. A fraction of a second between bullets and blades helped create one of the defining weapons of the air war. Reconnaissance was the first great military purpose of airplanes. Before aircraft became famous for combat, their most valuable role was seeing. Armies needed to know where the enemy was, where guns were placed, and how positions changed. An airplane could cross ground that scouts could not easily reach and return with information that affected decisions below. At first, some commanders doubted the usefulness of these fragile machines. That doubt faded when aerial reports proved accurate and timely. Pilots and observers became the eyes of the army. They watched troop movement, noted supply lines, and helped identify changes along the front. This work could be monotonous, frightening, and extremely important. The aircraft did not have to be fast or heavily armed to matter. It had to carry human vision into a place the enemy could not easily block. Reconnaissance also made control of the sky essential. If one side could observe freely while the other could not, the advantage was enormous. The first great air power was information. Aerial photography changed how armies understood the battlefield. Human observation from above was valuable, but a photograph could be studied, compared, and shared. Cameras turned brief flights into lasting records. Images revealed trenches, roads, gun positions, supply dumps, and changes that might escape the eye during a stressful mission. Analysts could place photographs side by side, and detect new construction or movement. This made the battlefield more measurable. It also changed command decisions. Leaders no longer depended only on reports from ground patrols or distant observers. They could inspect a captured slice of reality from above. Taking these photographs was dangerous. Aircraft had to fly predictable routes at useful altitudes, which made them targets. Weather, vibration, and exposure could spoil images. Yet the value was so high that the risk continued. Aerial photography became one of the foundations of modern intelligence. It proved that aviation's power was not limited to speed or attack. Sometimes the most important weapon in the aircraft was a camera. Dogfighting created a new kind of warrior in the sky. When aircraft began fighting each other directly, warfare entered a strange new arena. The pilot was no longer only a driver or observer. He became a combatant moving through three-dimensional space at speed, using altitude, surprise, turn rate, and nerve. Dogfighting demanded a new mixture of instincts. A pilot had to think like a hunter while managing a fragile machine and watching every direction. The sky offered no trenches to hide in and no roads to follow. Advantage could come from height, some position, or a moment of hesitation by the opponent. This kind of combat became personal because pilots could sometimes see the enemy aircraft closely, even the person inside it. Newspapers later turned some fighter pilots into romantic figures, but the reality was harsh and exhausting. Dogfighting created a warrior shaped by machinery, physics, and split-second judgment. It was an entirely new human role, born because the sky had become a battlefield. Ace pilots became legends while flying dangerously primitive machines. To become an ace, a pilot had to achieve a recognized number of aerial victories. The title carried glamour, but the conditions behind it were brutal. Fighters were often open cockpit aircraft built from like materials, with limited instruments and engines that could fail without warning. Pilots faced cold, vibration, poor visibility, and the constant strain of scanning the sky. Survival required more than marksmanship. It demanded situational awareness, mechanical understanding, and the ability to stay calm when a fight twisted in every direction. The legend of the ace grew because these individuals seemed to master an arena that was new to humanity. They were celebrated like knights of the air, although their machines were oil-streaked, noisy, and unforgiving. Many famous aces had short careers because the risks were so high. Their stories fascinate because they combined skill with fragility. They were not invincible heroes riding perfect machines. They were talented people surviving at the edge of a young technology. The Red Baron became history's most famous early fighter pilot. Manfred von Richthofen became a legend because his record, image, and timing all fused into a powerful story. His brightly painted aircraft made him instantly recognizable, which was unusual in a world where survival often depended on not being noticed. He was a disciplined tactician rather than a reckless showman. He studied opponents, used formation tactics, and understood the value of altitude and patience. His fame spread across both sides of the conflict, turning him into a symbol of aerial combat itself. The nickname gave the public an unforgettable figure, but the reality behind it was more complex. He was a professional soldier operating in a deadly new environment. His victories came during a period when fighter tactics were still being invented and refined. His death only deepened the mythology, because legends often harden when a famous life ends suddenly. He remains remembered because early air combat needed a face, and his became the most enduring one. Zeppelins crossed skies as giant airships before airplanes matured. These enormous craft represented a different vision of aviation. Instead of small machines balancing on wings, they were vast, lighter-than-air vessels carried by gas and driven by engines. To people watching from below, they must have seemed almost unbelievable in scale. Zeppelins could travel long distances and carry crews in ways early airplanes could not yet match. Their rigid frames held large gas cells inside a streamlined body, making them more ambitious than ordinary balloons. They promised endurance, range, and a kind of aerial presence that fixed-wing aircraft had not yet achieved. In the years before airplanes became truly capable long-distance machines, airships looked like a serious path to the future. They carried passengers, mail, and military hopes. Their size made them symbols of national engineering pride. Yet they also depended on weather, careful handling, and dangerous lifting gases in many cases. The Zeppelin age reminds us that the future of flight once had more than one possible shape. Airships promised luxury travel before disasters changed public trust. For a time, the great passenger airships offered an experience unlike anything else in the air. Their cabins could include dining spaces, sleeping accommodations, and room to move in ways early airplanes could not provide. Instead of squeezing into a noisy small cabin, travelers could cross long distances with a sense of ceremony. Airship voyages suggested that flight might become elegant before it became fast. They also created unforgettable images of enormous vessels floating over cities and oceans. But public confidence depended on safety, and a few disasters had enormous impact. Fire, weather vulnerability, and operational difficulty made people reconsider the promise. The most famous catastrophe became a lasting symbol of airship danger, even though the technology had achieved remarkable journeys before it. Trust is fragile in transportation. One terrible event can outweigh years of success in public memory. Airships did not vanish instantly, but their dream of dominating passenger travel faded as airplanes grew safer, faster, and more practical. Early aviation turned an ancient human dream into a practical world. For most of history, flight belonged to myth, birds, and imagination. The early aviators changed that by turning longing into engineering. They did not do it all at once. They tested balloons, gliders, engines, controls, instruments, materials, routes, and human endurance. Every step made the impossible more ordinary. A person could rise, steer, cross water, carry mail, race, fight, and travel as a passenger. The transformation was astonishing because it happened within living memory for people of that era. Someone born before powered flight could later see aircraft linking cities and crossing oceans. The dream did not lose its wonder when it became practical. In some ways, it became more remarkable. It moved from storybook fantasy into schedules, workshops, maps, and machines that people could touch. Early aviation shows how humanity often advances. A wild idea becomes an experiment. An experiment becomes a craft. A craft becomes a system. Then one day, the sky becomes part of everyday life. And so we come gently back down from the first great age of flight. Tonight, we followed humanity as it slowly learned that the sky was not unreachable after all. We began with balloons rising above astonished crowds, when people first saw living passengers drift into the air. Then we moved through the fragile world of gliders, where inventors learned that flight was not only about lifting upward, but about balance, patience, and control. We watched the earliest airplanes tremble across open fields. We saw wood, fabric, wire, and engine noise become something that could cross water, carry mail, race for trophies, and change the shape of the modern world. We met pilots who flew without radios, followed rivers and railways, trusted smoke and flags, and learned courage in machines that still felt new to the earth. We also remember the pioneers who made aviation wider than anyone expected. Women crossed barriers in the air and on the ground. Engineers turned rough ideas into stronger wings. Airfields became airports. Stunts became skills. The sky became a place of work, travel, danger, and wonder. And now, after all that motion, you can let the story settle. There is nothing more you need to follow. Let the engines fade in your imagination. Let the old runways grow still. Let the distant wings pass softly into the night. If you enjoyed this gentle journey through history, you are welcome to like, subscribe, or leave a thought below. It helps others find their way here too. And if you happen to still be awake, another sleepy journey should be waiting on the screen for you. But for now, let your shoulders loosen. Let your breathing slow. Let the day fall away, as lightly as an aircraft disappearing into the darkening sky. Sleep well, and good night.